That's Winnie, my brand new little granddaughter, and that's why I'm doing this.
Wow, isn't that something?
This is the whole stop, you know, stop what you're doing, and then that whole sort of nurturing, holding, trying to protect the next generation.
That's a great picture.
Isn't she cute?
Yeah. Tell me about this world.
This is the Halliburton loophole. And this is injecting that awful stuff through the groundwater. And this is Dick Cheney's mask. Just a thought.
Wow. Got a totally different tool, it's great.
The stakes really are high. She's going to be a refugee by the middle of the century because her country's not going to exist anymore. We have to work very quickly, and the power of the opposition in terms of the fossil fuel industry is very large. So there's no guarantees that we're going to win.
It's bad. Problem is bad.
It is bad. I'm Marnie Stanton, and I've created a series of abstract sculptures to illustrate the complicated story of climate change. I have always used the creative process to sustain my balance. The sculptures that you will see here are no exception. They were created to deflect the craziness that I've been witnessing between the multiple voices in the scientific community who are raising the alarm around climate change and a few very vocal naysayers who continue to happily skew reality. Couple them with the multitudes that have buried their heads in the sand to avoid dealing with this very complicated issue, and we've created a perfect opportunity for Mother Nature to step up to the plate and bat last.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.
Martha's Vineyard, a tiny sandy speck of an island off the North American coast, has been my home for many years. Here, all 6 towns maintain their unique character and colorful heritage for the thousands of visitors that annually descend on our shores. We think we are special, and we are. Neptune, the god of the sea, thinks we're special as well, and has singled out our south shore as a tasty snack to be gobbled up faster than the entire rest of the New England coastline. It won't be long before I can hitch up my kayak to our light post for a sparkly paddle down to the post office.
10,000 years, the world's climate has been remarkably stable. It has stayed virtually the same, about 57 degrees Fahrenheit for that 10,000 years. We learned to burn coal, then gas and oil. Whenever you burn fossil fuel, you release carbon in the form of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And this carbon dioxide, its molecular structure, traps heat that would otherwise radiate back out to space.
Carbon dioxide is the major heat-trapping gas. It's roughly 60% of the climatic disruption. Fossil fuels, that produces about 8.5 billion tons of carbon dumped into the atmosphere annually. Deforestation, that produces a net of about 1.5 billion tons of carbon dumped into the atmosphere annually. 5 billion tons of the total 10 billion tons of emissions stays in the atmosphere and constitutes the problem. Fusion of carbon into the oceans of the Earth amounts to about 2 billion of the 10 billion tons. That changes the chemistry of the oceans. It's absorbed first as a gas into the upper layers of the ocean, and then into the carbonate-bicarbonate system of the ocean. Changing the acidity is another chronic disturbance, similar to changing the temperature or any other environmental factor. All of the life of the Earth has been adapted to climates of the past over tens of thousands of years. So all of the life of the Earth is genetically fixed to that climatic regime. We've changed the climatic regime right out from under all of the life of the Earth.
The CO2 used to go down for like the last 400,000 years. It's gone down to 200 parts per million. And then it goes up to 300 and then back to 200. And so it's beginning and end of ice ages is a difference of 100.
So that amount of carbon in the atmosphere, which has been steady for the last 10,000 years at about 275 parts per million, began to climb 200 years ago, and it's climbed ever steeper. It's now about 390 parts per million in the atmosphere.
It's a change of about 100 in 100 or 200 years, not 100,000 years. So we're in a different ball game. I don't have enough knowledge to say it's alarming. It certainly is different as hell.
3 years ago, after the Arctic began its very rapid melt, our best scientists, a NASA team, published a paper saying, we know enough to say how much carbon in the atmosphere is too much. Anything more than 350 parts per million, they said, is not compatible with the planet on which civilization developed or to which life on Earth is adapted. We've got to stop burning fossil fuel. That's the task, and a very hard task it is.
Our government is heavily controlled apparently by money, and they have virtually infinite money, and so they've had enormous power. They've been able to dominate the discussions nationally over the past 20 years. Scurrilously undermining the science and promoting their own interests, not just the fossil fuel interests, but also the pesticide interests and all the allied interests that are tied in with cheap fossil fuel energy. They have systematically questioned the accuracy of the science behind the climatic disruption, and they've been successful in the public eye because our news media have listened to them and said, well, on the one hand, the scientists say, and on the other hand, the industries say, as though the industries were equivalent to the scientific community in making an appraisal of the seriousness of the problem. And when they've been caught wrong in their appraisals of science, they've said, well, we can't afford to do anything else. We have to do it this way for economic reasons. All lies. The effects, we said 40 years ago, would be to warm the continental centers, and warming them, dry them out. And we're watching that now. We're watching drought hit every continent. We're watching agriculture be crippled, people having to migrate off the land. Melting of the Arctic ice, that's happening at a rate that exceeds even the most outrageous appraisals of 10 years ago. The experts are looking back over history and discovering that it happened previously, that the glaciers disappeared in a surprisingly short time. Those are the effects of the warming of the Earth caused by human pollution of the atmosphere. It's as straightforward as that.
Anybody who can understand, say that when they go to the doctor and the doctor says your cholesterol level is too high, you're going to have a heart attack, we all know how to react when that happens. You know, this is exactly the same, just on a planetary scale.
We always hear about jobs leaving America. Here's a chance to create jobs in America. Oil sands projects like Pearl and the Keystone Pipeline will provide secure and reliable energy to the United States. Over the coming years, projects like these could create more than 500,000 jobs in the U.S. alone, from the Canadian border through the Midwest to the Gulf Coast, benefiting hundreds of thousands of families throughout the country. This is just what our economy needs right now.
There is no global warming. It's getting colder. While a majority of Americans nationwide continue to acknowledge significant disagreement about global warming in the scientific community, most go even further to say that some scientists are falsifying data to support their own beliefs. I'm going to raise my hand and we'll take credit. And 69% of the American people now say it's likely scientists have been lying about their own research. We win.
Wake up, folks. The big boys aren't asleep. They haven't given up on America. Why should you? I'm gonna give it to you. Here you go. That's for you. That's for you. This is your home. It's your home. Isn't that fun? This is where you live. You wanna see where you live? You live right there. The world is all yours.